about the how much you would make if you how much you would pay in taxes if you made $200,000 per year. That last part I didn't have time to do. If we're finding the percentage of your income that you're having to pay in taxes, then all you do is you take the amount that you paid in taxes, $49,858.25, and you divide it by your total income that you had, so $200,000. And that's going to give you a decimal, so you get 0.24929, but you're going to move that decimal place 2 places to make it a percent, so 24.9% here. And the question didn't ask for that, but I like to compare those because you can see, while that person that made $200,000, they fall into the 33% tax bracket. They actually only pay 24.9% of their total income because not all of their money was in that 33% tax bracket. So if you're in those highest brackets, you probably pay a little bit less than the percent there because not all of your money falls into that. Or any bracket that you're in, you pay a little less. Unless you're in the first bracket, then you definitely pay 10% because there's no difference for that. Okay. Questions? I will also add in one more disclaimer about this. You guys, teenagers, you guys are so young that when Mitt Romney was running for president, was that the first? Yeah, that was pretty young. Yeah, that sounds right. But so you probably don't remember this because you guys were in 4th grade and you did not care much about Mitt Romney. But Mitt Romney ran against, was that Obama's first term or second term? Was it his first term? I think it was. Who ran against him second term? Why don't I remember that? Was it, who ran against him first? Why do I not know that? I should know that. Hold on. It's in there. Also, it's important for us to remember who was running, I guess. You guys are so young, nobody's going to judge you if you can't remember who ran against Obama in his first term because you were in kindergarten, so nobody cares that you don't know. I should remember that, but I didn't. But now maybe I will forget. Okay, so here's what we're going to do. We want to turn this into a piecewise function. So we're only going to do the first 3 brackets because it just kind of becomes redundant for the next brackets. We could do the whole thing, but we're just going to do the first 3 brackets. So we're going to make this a piecewise function, and we're going to let x equal our total income. So, screen's on. Oh, wait. Hold on. There we go. Okay, so when we write our piecewise function, please make sure you put f of x equals, leave yourself a lot of room. You need 3 lines of this piecewise function. So you're going to have, I'm going to put myself some lines. You're going to have your first line. Leave yourself plenty of room. The first one you won't actually need it, but the next 2 you will. And then this is for 0 less than x less than or equal to $9,075. And then we'll have the next line of our function, and this is for $9,075 less than x less than or equal to 36,900. Notice here I'm putting the or equal to with the higher number. Here, if you make $0, they can't tax you, so we don't want to put an equal to there. And then so that way, if you make $9,075, your tax is the 10% rate. If you make $9,075.01, then you would be taxed at the next rate. So anything above that. And then for the last one, we'd have $36,900 to $89,350, and we could keep on going with that for the next brackets if we wanted to. I think you'll probably get the idea just by doing these first three brackets. So the first bracket is really simple because if you don't make much money, it's a little easier to figure your taxes. You just pay 10% of whatever you make. So it would just be 0.1 times X. And so the next ones are more complicated because if we make, let's say, $10,000, then we don't pay 15% of that whole $10,000, right? We only pay 15% of the part that's above $9,075. So what I need you to do is I need you to write me an equation, and I'm going to give you guys a few minutes to think about it and try it. I want you to write me an equation where if I plug in $10,000, it'll tell me the correct tax. And then for this next line, you need to have another equation where if you plug in a good one to use for that second equation is the $45,000 that we used yesterday to see if your equation works. I'll go ahead and tell you right now, if you make $10,000, then you've got $9,075. You got to pay 0.1% of that. Plus, you've got, if you made $10,000, you got an extra $925, right? Because 9,075 plus 925 would give us 10,000. And you've got to pay 15% of that. So if we do that here, we will get 907.5 plus 925 times 0.15. So $1,046.25. Thank you. $1,046.25. That was correct. Okay, so for this, that's just a good test point. If you plug in 10,000 to your equation, you should get $1,046.25 out of the equation. If you don't get that, then your equation is not right. Okay, and then you could also use that $45,000. That was like 7,000 something that we did yesterday. You can use that to test your third line. So right now, I want you to take some time and try to come up with a piecewise function for this. Move this up a little bit. So the first bracket is very straightforward, 0.1 times X. Right. But whenever you get to the second bracket, you have to pay tax on two brackets, right? So you got to include both of those. If you're in the second bracket, you have already filled up the first bracket, right? Which means that you had to take $9,075 and pay, and you guys might have it in a different order or done it a little bit different last time, and multiply by 0.1. Right, or you may just went ahead and multiply that together and have $907.50 right there. So that's how much you pay for the first bracket. For the second bracket, you're going to pay 15%. But I'm going to do something wrong right now. Don't do this. If I just do 0.15x, look what happens when I try that. I've got the 9075 plus 0.15. I'm going to use 10,000 just because I already know what the answer is. And that gives me $10,576. That cannot possibly be right because I've got to pay $10,575 tax on only $10,000. I can't even do that, right? Because I don't even make that much money. So what's wrong with this is if I put that X right there, I am taxing 15%. Actually, hold on. I typed this in wrong. So let me go back. It wouldn't be 10,000. It still would be wrong. But 0.15. It'd be $2,407.50. Still too high, though. It's almost double what we're supposed to pay tax on. Right here, when I put that X right there, I'm paying 15% of $10,000 or $15% of however much money I made, right? I don't pay 15% of that entire amount because I've already paid taxes on the first $9,075. So what we have to do here is put some parentheses around it. Let's subtract the $975 or $9,075. And now, if we type that in, then I get $1,046.25, which is the right answer. Okay, questions on that part? So the next bracket is really similar. If you are in the third bracket, you had to pay tax on the first bracket. I'm going to write this out the long way, but then I'll also show you how you can write this just a little more condensed. So, $9,075, you got to pay 10% of that. If you make it to the third bracket, then you filled up the second bracket. And filling up the second bracket means that you would take $36,900 and subtract $9,075, which is $27,825. So you would have to take that $27,825 and you'd have to pay 15% of it. And then for the last part, you're somewhere in this bracket. You don't know how much money you make, but you do know that you fall somewhere between these. So you would have to pay 25% of whatever you make minus how much money have we already paid taxes on? I think I heard it. $36,900 for that one. Okay, and if we try this one, we could use that $45,000 because we already know what the answer is for that. So we have 907.5 plus 27,825 times 0.15 plus 0.25 times 45,000 minus 36,900. And we get that $7,106.25 that we got yesterday. So that makes us feel pretty good that our equation is correct. Now, what you might decide to do, because if we were doing all of the tax brackets, these equations would get really, really, really long doing them this way. So what you might decide to do instead when you write these is, so f of x equals, and you may have already written it this way, and if you did, that's good. You don't necessarily have to write this down. But you would have 0.1x for the first one. For the second one, and you can write it this, like you might have 0.15 times x minus 9075 plus, go ahead and multiply this together, 907.5. And then for this one, you might write it like this, 25 times x minus 36,900 plus, and then you could take your calculator and add that 907.5 plus 27,825 times 0.15. And you would get 5,081.25. And you'd have the same. So you could write it different ways and it would still be correct. Okay. Questions on that? Okay, here's another one. These are the tax brackets from 1987. These are real, and especially to you guys, really old. I was 1 in 1987, so it's really old. But you can see tax brackets. You should notice these numbers are fairly similar, right? The percentages are not a lot different, but you can see that these numbers are a lot smaller. There is a typo right here. That should have an extra 0 on it, 16,800 there. So if you made like 55,000 in 1987, you're top tax bracket. But if you made that now, or well, 6 years ago, then you're just the third tax bracket. So, let's actually, I would like for us to skip to the last slide that has the same thing on there. I want you guys for this one to write the piecewise function first. Okay, try writing the piecewise function first for this one. And that typo's on both of those charts there. So try writing this piece. Go ahead and do them all for this one. Which means you might need to write small. Or possibly use the area below or beside. For that last one, just do this. X is greater than 54,000. Mm-hmm. Okay, so let's see. Let's look and check what you got. A few of you might be finishing up those last brackets. So first bracket, 0.11 times x, very straightforward. So if you make it, what I've done over here is I've figured out how much tax you would pay for each bracket if it were full. So if you are in the second bracket, you had to pay all of the tax on the first bracket. So that was 18,000 times 0.11, which is $198. So you would have 0.15 times x minus $1,800 plus 198, or you might have put the 198 first, or you might have written it as 1,800 times 0.11. That's fine. I don't mind if it's long. That's okay. Just for space and writing it up here, I'm going to go ahead and simplify. So then, if you make it to the next bracket, you got to pay 28%. And if I've missed one of these up, let me know. I think I've done it correctly. And so you got to pay 28% of x minus the 16,800 that you've already paid taxes on. And so to this, you would have to add the 198 and the 2250. So if we put those two together, you're going to get 2,448 if you added those all together. Or it is fine with me. If you put 1,800 times 0.11 plus 15,000 times 0.15, you can write it out the long way is okay. I'm completely concerned with you getting it correct, not so much on what it looks like, although it does take up less space if you go ahead and combine those right there. Questions so far? The next one is 35%. And we do x minus the $27,000 we've already paid taxes on. And for this one, you'd have to pay tax on the first, the second, and the third bracket. So you'd add all three of these together. And when you do that, you should get 5,304. And for the last one, you should have 0.385 times x minus 54,000 plus, and then here you would have to add all four of the other brackets together, and that'll be 14,754. Okay, questions on that? Yes. Mm-hmm. Okay, so for those, what I'm doing here is, like, for the first bracket, I've got just $18,000 in that first bracket, right? So if I multiply that by 0.11, that gives me the 198. So that goes, it does not go on the first bracket because you didn't fill up that bracket, right? It goes for the second one because if you're in that second bracket, that means the first bracket was full. So you include that. Then for the second bracket, if you take 16,800 and subtract 1,800, that tells you the amount of money that falls in that second bracket, which in this case is $15,000. Here, so we subtract these two, and then I'm going to take 15% of that. And so 15% of the 15,000 is 22,050. And then so, but I don't just use that number, because if I'm in the third bracket, I had to fill up the first and the second, so I can add both of those numbers right there together to get that 2,448. And then you just kind of keep doing that. Right. Probably. So you were taking 15% of this whole thing and then adding in that 198. So you were paying taxes on that first bracket money twice whenever you did that. And so all your numbers were too high, right? So you want to subtract the two values here because that tells you how much money is in that middle bracket. If you think of it like buckets, you put some of your cash in this one, it's taxed a certain percent. Then the next part, if you add those two together, you have 16,800, but you've only got 15,000 right here. Does that make sense? Okay. All right. Other questions? I think these are kind of tough. I've either got better at teaching it or my kids are getting smarter, though, because I feel like kids have been doing better with these over the past couple years as I've been teaching them. When I first started teaching them, we just all stared at the page for a while. It's probably my fault. I probably wasn't teaching it very well. But it is a little bit tough. So we will do a little more practice with this, although we do need to answer that other question on the other slide. We'll do a little more practice with this. You will have a test review. They'll have some of this on it, and I'll probably do a warm-up tomorrow with it too. So now some people, I had you guys start from the idea of you make $45,000 and we're figuring up our tax. But now that we know how to write a piecewise function, some students find it easier to write the piecewise function first and then go back and answer the other questions. So on your test that you guys will have on Friday, there is a tax problem. It's not the exact same numbers as this, but it's the exact same idea as this. You'll have percentages, you'll have ranges of income. So the questions will ask you sort of like I've been doing, where if you make $40,000, how much tax do you pay? If you make $27,000, how much do you pay? And then at the end, it'll ask you to write a piecewise function. Some students like to go to the end and write their piecewise function first, because now that we got a piecewise function, if we go back here, we want to know how much we would have to pay if we made $40,000. So for that, we could use our piecewise function. And if you make $40,000, that falls in that fourth bracket right there between $27,000 and $54,000. So you would do you could use your equation, 0.35 times 40,000 minus 27,000 plus 5,304. And when you do that, you get 9,854, which is the answer to the problem over here. So 9,854. So some students prefer to do that rather than do the problem the way we're doing it at first. So it's up to you on those. Okay. Questions about any of these? Okay, I should have